Months after the divorce, a billionaire goes out for a romantic dinner with his new girlfriend, but upon finding his pregnant ex-wife working hard, he becomes furious. I want a divorce. Ethan's words sliced through the pristine silence of the Manhattan penthouse, sharp as shattered glass. Olivia, still wrapped in a designer silk robe, froze, her morning coffee cup rattling against its saucer. The positive pregnancy test tucked deep in her robe pocket suddenly felt like an anchor, weighing a ton. Ethan, a formidable silhouette in his custom Brioni suit, gazed out at the glittering expanse of Manhattan through the floor-to-ceiling window. We've grown too far apart, Olivia. It's time for us to go our separate ways. Olivia choked down a wave of nausea, unsure if it was morning sickness or the brutal shock of his decree. 15 years, Ethan, 15 years, and this is how it ends. A memory flared, hot and bittersweet. Olivia and Ethan, young and broke, toasting their future with cheap coffee and paper cups in their first cramped East Village walk-up. One day we'll have the world at our feet, Ethan had promised, his eyes burning with a potent mix of ambition and adoration. Back in the present, Olivia studied the man before her. Where was that hungry dreamer? Wall Street had sculpted Ethan into someone she didn't recognize, a creature of cold calculation. The lawyers will handle the details, Ethan continued, glancing at his Audemars Piguet. I have a meeting, don't wait for me for dinner. He was gone, leaving Olivia alone with the roaring silence of her world collapsing around her. A flashback, Ethan, exhausted but electric, bursting into their apartment at 3 a.m. We did it, Olivia, we sealed the deal. Olivia, pregnant with their first child, had thrown her arms around him, sharing in his triumph, the promise of a brilliant future, a tangible thing in the air between them. Back to now, Olivia staggered to the marble bathroom, the tears finally breaking free. Her reflection was a testament to a woman who had poured everything, her career, her own ambitions, into the foundation of a man who now cast her aside like a poorly performing stock. The days bled into a brutalist ballet of depositions and asset liquidation. Olivia, her pregnancy still a fiercely guarded secret, watched in numb horror as Ethan and his legal sharks systematically dismantled the life they had built. It's just business, Olivia, Ethan stated, his voice devoid of emotion during one of the conference calls. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. Another flashback, sharp and painful. Olivia, holding Ethan's hand through the night, comforting him after his first major deal collapsed. We'll get through this together, she had promised, her faith in him absolute. The irony was a bitter pill she couldn't swallow. She had been his steadfast partner on the climb, and now, at the summit, she was being pushed off the ledge, an inconvenient relic of a past Ethan was desperate to erase. The divorce machine ground forward, relentless and merciless. Unprepared for the legal onslaught, Olivia saw her options evaporate. The beloved Hamptons Lake House was liquidated, her savings account decimated, her future a terrifying blank canvas. You should have been smarter, protected yourself better, Ethan's lawyer said with clinical detachment, shoving another document across the mahogany table for her signature. Olivia's hand trembled over the paper. Should she reveal the pregnancy, use it as leverage in this cruel game? No. The decision solidified in her gut, hard as diamond. This baby, this new life, deserved more than to be a pawn on a financial chessboard. It would be her secret, her strength. Sign here, please, the lawyer's drone pulled her back. With a shaky breath, Olivia signed, feeling the ink seal the end, not just of a marriage, but of an entire era of her life. Days later, Olivia stood in her new Brooklyn studio, a shoebox compared to the palatial home she'd known. Boxes were stacked high, monuments to a life that was no longer hers. She unpacked a photograph, the last one taken before the fall. Ethan and Olivia, smiling for the cameras at a business gala. Her eyes fixed on Ethan, so polished, so impossibly distant. When had he become a stranger? The phone's jarring ring shattered the silence. It was her sister, Jessica. Olivia, How are you holding up?" Olivia hesitated, her hand instinctively coming to rest on her stomach. "I'm surviving," she managed, her voice thick with unshed tears. "That bastard Jessica," hissed, her voice crackling with fury, "after everything you did for him." Olivia closed her eyes, a montage of sacrifice playing behind her lids. The sleepless nights helping Ethan craft business proposals, the elaborate dinners hosted to charm investors, the teaching career she'd put on hold to bolster his. "He'll regret it," Olivia. "Men like Ethan always do eventually." Olivia offered no reply, her gaze drifting to the window, the city skyline looking alien and imposing from this new, lower vantage point. 15 years ago, she and Ethan had arrived in this city with nothing but dreams and each other. Now she was starting over, alone. But not entirely, she reminded herself, her hand caressing the gentle curve of her belly. A new life, a new beginning. "Olivia, you still there?" Jessica's concerned voice echoed down the line. "Yes," Olivia answered, a new steel entering her tone. "I'm here, and I'll be fine." Meanwhile, across the river in Manhattan, Ethan raised a champagne flute in his penthouse office, flanked by partners and lawyers. "To the future gentleman," he declared, a triumphant smile stretching across his face. But as the sound of clinking crystal faded, for a fleeting moment, Ethan was ambushed by an inexplicable void. His gaze drifted over the city lights below, and for a split second he wondered where Olivia was. Shaking his head to banish the unwelcome thought, Ethan turned his focus back to the men celebrating around him. He had an empire to run. There was no time for looking back. Little did he know that fate had other plans. The path he had carved from ambition and ruthlessness would inevitably lead him back to Olivia, in a way neither could possibly imagine. Night fell over the city, wrapping two separate souls in its vast darkness. Olivia, facing an unknown future, with a new life stirring inside her. Ethan, on top of the world, yet nursing a hollowness that no amount of success could fill. The first chapter of their lives had closed. The next was about to begin, promising twists that would test them both beyond their limits. Fall gave way to winter, and winter to a slushy New York spring. 6 months passed in a flash for Ethan, and as a grueling eternity for Olivia. Ethan adjusted his silk tie, his reflection in the private elevator's mirrored walls screaming success. The new haircut was obscenely expensive, but it perfectly complemented his custom Italian suit. He smirked, satisfied. At 45, he'd never felt more alive, more liberated. The elevator doors opened into the lobby of the Skyline, the city's newest and most exclusive restaurant. Ethan strode in, his eyes sweeping the room until they landed on his target. Brittany. Brittany rose to greet him, a dazzling smile igniting her face. At 32, she was the personification of ambition and success, her tight black dress a siren call of power and sensuality. "Ethan," she purred, leaning in for a kiss on the cheek that lingered just a fraction too long. "I thought you'd never arrive." He grinned, pulling out her chair. Traffic was awful, but it was worth the wait, wasn't it? Meanwhile, across the city, Olivia wrestled with a tray of 3 plates, her arms aching with fatigue. The cloying smell of grease and the deafening roar of the Burger Bliss diner where she worked was a constant assault on her senses. "Order up for table 5, the cook yelled, his voice barely cutting through the lunchtime chaos. Olivia sighed, adjusting the apron that did little to hide her 6-month belly. She moved with practiced care between the crowded tables, delivering orders with a smile she didn't feel. "More ketchup, please," a customer demanded. "Sure, just a moment," Olivia replied on autopilot, her mind already on the second shift she had to pull in a few hours at the convenience store. Back at the upscale restaurant, Ethan and Brittany were deep in a spirited conversation about mergers and acquisitions. "Your move at the last board meeting was brilliant," Brittany praised, her eyes alight with a mix of admiration and shrewd calculation. "No wonder you're considered the shark of the market." Ethan smiled, savoring the expensive wine and the even more intoxicating praise. You've got to have the instincts to survive in this world, Brittany, and you seem to have plenty. Their eyes locked over the rims of their glasses, a silent current of mutual attraction and ambition arcing between them. Meanwhile, Olivia collapsed onto a bench in the cramped employee locker room, her feet screaming inside her worn-out sneakers. She pulled from her pocket the ultrasound photo she'd taken that morning before her first shift. "Hey, Olivia, you okay?" asked Maria, a coworker, her voice laced with concern. Olivia quickly stashed the photo. "Yeah, just tired, the usual." Maria frowned. "You shouldn't be working so much in your condition. Don't you have anyone to help you?" Olivia forced a smile. "I'm fine. Really just need to rest a bit before the next shift." As Olivia fought to keep her eyes open, Ethan and Brittany were leaving the skyline, the night air thick with promise. "My place is just 2 blocks away," Brittany whispered, her fingers tracing a line down Ethan's arm. He smiled, pulling her closer. "Lead the way, then." The next morning, Ethan awoke in silk sheets, the lingering scent of Brittany's expensive perfume in the air. He stretched, deeply satisfied, before checking his phone. 3 missed calls from his assistant and an urgent email about a potential hostile takeover. "Duty calls," Brittany's sleepy voice murmured from across the bed. Ethan was already on his feet, searching for his clothes. "Unfortunately, how about dinner again tonight? I have a business proposal you might find interesting." Brittany smiled, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Business and pleasure, you know how to please a woman, Ethan." Meanwhile, Olivia dragged herself out of her tiny bed, every muscle protesting. She glanced at the clock and cursed. She was late for her job interview at the department store. Rushing down the street, Olivia barely registered the giant digital billboard in Times Square advertising the latest venture from Sterling Corp., the empire she had helped Ethan build. His confident face loomed over the city, a constant, painful reminder of everything she had lost. Weeks blurred into a grueling cycle of endless shifts and sleepless nights for Olivia. For Ethan, it was a whirlwind of power lunches, nights with Brittany, and soaring profits. On one particularly bleak afternoon, Olivia found herself crumpled on the floor of her tiny bathroom, silent tears tracing paths down her cheeks. A crumpled denial letter for maternity aid was clenched in her fist. "How am I going to do this?" she whispered to her reflection in the cracked mirror. The woman staring back looked like a stranger, with dark circles under her eyes and hair that had lost its shine. At that very same moment, miles away, Ethan raised a toast with Brittany in his penthouse office. To our new partnership, he declared, his gaze fixed not on the impressive figures of the newly signed contract, but on Brittany's curves. She smiled, leaning across his desk. "I think this calls for a proper celebration, don't you?" While Ethan savored his triumph, Olivia pushed herself up from the bathroom floor. She straightened her wrinkled uniform and met her own gaze in the mirror again. "You can do this," she told herself, her voice shaking but filled with a newfound resolve. "For the baby, you can do this." The sun set over the city, casting long shadows. 2 lives, once woven together, now spiraled down radically different trajectories. Ethan, at the pinnacle of success, drunk on power and lust. Olivia, fighting for survival day by day, yet discovering a strength she never knew she possessed. But fate, that whimsical puppeteer, was just getting started. Ethan and Olivia's paths were destined to cross again, in a way neither of them could possibly predict. Night fell, cloaking the city in its dark embrace. In her luxurious apartment, Ethan fell asleep in Brittany's arms, dreaming of new conquests. In her modest studio, Olivia finally found rest, a protective hand covering her growing belly. 6 months had turned their worlds upside down. The next 6 promised even more. Ethan adjusted the Italian silk tie in front of the full-length mirror in his walk-in closet. The Armani suit, custom-tailored to perfection, was a testament to 6 months of intense sessions with his private trainer. At 45, he had never felt so alive, so in control. Perfect, he muttered to his reflection, a confident smile playing on his lips. Tonight was more than a dinner. It was his official debut into high society, with Brittany by his side, his new life finally complete. The soft chime of the doorbell echoed through the apartment. Ethan checked his Rolex. Punctual, as always. Another reason Brittany was the perfect partner. He opened the door, and for a moment his breath caught. Brittany was a vision in a scarlet dress that clung to her like a second skin. At 32, she radiated ambition and sensuality. "You look magnificent," Ethan managed, his eyes drinking in every curve. Brittany smiled, her eyes gleaming with a mix of desire and calculation. "Only the best for tonight, darling, after all. It's our big debut, isn't it?" Ethan offered his arm, and they descended to the garage where the driver awaited with the limousine. As they glided through the city streets, Ethan felt a surge of pride. Brittany was everything he had ever wanted: smart, ambitious, and, above all, a partner who understood the game of power. Nervous, he asked, noticing Brittany adjusting her diamond necklace. She laughed, a controlled, crystalline sound. "Ethan, darling, I was born ready for this. The question is, are they ready for us?" The restaurant, the Skyline, was the epitome of exclusivity, perched atop the tallest building in Midtown. It was the playground of the rich and powerful. The moment the limousine pulled up, camera flashes erupted like a sudden storm. Ethan stepped out first, offering his hand to Brittany. They posed for a beat, the perfect image of glamour and success. The maitre d' greeted them with an almost comically deep bow. "Mr. Miller, Miss DuPont, welcome to the Skyline. Your table awaits." As they were led through the restaurant, Ethan felt the weight of every gaze. He recognized the faces of politicians, celebrities, and titans of industry. Every look, every hushed whisper affirmed his status. Their table was perfectly positioned by the panoramic windows, offering a breathtaking vista of the city. The lights below twinkled like a carpet of diamonds. Champagne to start, offered the sommelier. "Dom Perignon, 2008 vintage," Ethan replied without a second's hesitation. "Only the best tonight." As their glasses were filled, Ethan surveyed the room. The low hum of conversation, the delicate clinking of silverware, the soft strains of a live string quartet. It all reeked of luxury and refinement. A toast, Ethan proposed, raising his glass to us and to the bright future that awaits. Brittany smiled, her eyes locked on his. "To us and to all the worlds we'll conquer together." The dinner proceeded like a flawlessly orchestrated ballet. Each course was a culinary masterpiece, each wine a perfect compliment. Between courses, Ethan and Brittany circulated, schmoozing with the other distinguished guests. A handshake with a senator here, an exchange of business cards with an oil tycoon there. Each interaction was a carefully choreographed dance of networking and power plays. "Ethan, my boy," a familiar voice boomed. It was Walter Sterling, one of the most influential investors in the city. "I see you finally found a partner who's up to your level." Ethan smiled, pulling Brittany closer. "Walter, allow me to introduce Brittany DuPont." "Brittany, this is Walter Sterling." Charmed, Brittany said in her silken voice, "Thomas has told me so much about your joint ventures. Fascinating, really." Walter looked pleased. "Well, well, Ethan, seems you've hit the mark this time, not like well you know." Ethan's smile tightened for a microsecond. A fleeting image of Olivia flashed through his mind, and he ruthlessly suppressed it. "The past is the past, Walter. We're focused on the future now." As the night wore on, Ethan felt an increasing sense of euphoria. Every conversation, every nod of approval, every shared laugh with Brittany, it all confirmed he had made the right choice. This was his world. Around midnight, they decided to call it a night. While waiting for the elevator, he couldn't resist pulling her into a passionate kiss. "You were incredible tonight," he murmured against her lips. Brittany smiled, her eyes shining with a mix of triumph and desire. "We were incredible, Ethan, and this is only the beginning." On the ride back, Ethan replayed the evening. Everything had been perfect. The dinner, the company, the connections. With Brittany at his side, he felt invincible. Reaching Brittany's apartment, Ethan hesitated. "Do you want me to come up?" She traced the line of his jaw with a perfectly manicured nail. "Not tonight, darling. Leave them wanting more. Isn't that how the game is played?" Ethan laughed, once again admiring her cunning. "You're dangerous, you know that." "That's why you love me," she replied with a feline smile before slipping out of the car. Back in his own penthouse, Ethan poured himself an expensive whiskey and walked out onto the balcony. The city stretched before him, vast and ripe with promise. A wave of deep satisfaction washed over him. This was the world he had always craved: power, prestige, the perfect partner. At last, after years of struggle and sacrifice, he was on top. As he savored the whiskey, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. His mind briefly drifted to Olivia, a passing curiosity about where she might be now. But the thought was quickly dismissed. The past was the past. This was his moment, his perfect life. Little did he know that destiny was about to play its hand. The perfection he cherished was about to be shattered in ways he could never have predicted. Ethan finished his drink and went to bed, dreaming of new conquests and greater glories. The city glittered on outside, indifferent to the dramas unfolding within its canyons. And somewhere, not far away, fate was setting its next piece on the board, ready to upend Ethan's world. The skyline was humming with its usual Friday night elite clientele. Olivia, her 7-month pregnancy carefully disguised under her black waitress uniform, expertly wove between tables, balancing expensive plates and a strained smile. "New order for table 12, the chef yelled, his voice barely audible over the kitchen's cacophony. Olivia sighed under her breath, discreetly adjusting the elastic waistband of her uniform. Her back ached, and her swollen feet throbbed with every step, but she couldn't afford to slow down. Not with rent overdue and prenatal bills piling up. "Olivia VIP table just arrived. It's all yours," the maitre d' instructed, giving her a sharp, warning look. "Don't mess this up." She nodded, taking a deep breath as she approached the most exclusive section of the restaurant. Her mind flickered to the ultrasound picture tucked away in her locker. Her little secret, her wellspring of strength. Olivia's world came to a screeching halt the moment her eyes met Ethan's. Ethan, impeccable in his Armani suit, froze mid-sentence, his champagne glass suspended in mid-air. Beside him, Brittany looked on, her curiosity piqued by his sudden change in demeanor. "Good evening, and welcome to the skyline," Olivia managed to say, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly. "I'm Olivia, and I'll be your server tonight." The silence that fell over the table was heavy and deafening, broken only by the distant clink of silverware and murmured conversations. Ethan was the first to recover, his expression shifting from pure shock to barely concealed fury. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, his voice low enough for only Olivia and Brittany to hear. Olivia held his gaze, years of practice at his side for social functions, kicking into high gear. "Working as you can see, may I bring you the wine list?" Sensing the palpable tension, Brittany smoothly intervened. "Yes, please, and perhaps you could recommend tonight's special." Olivia nodded, grateful for the interruption. As she detailed the dishes, her eyes kept snagging on Ethan's, which flickered between raw anger and something else she couldn't quite decipher. Guilt? Regret? "I'll return in a few minutes to take your orders," Olivia concluded, turning to leave. "Wait," Ethan called out, his voice taut. "Can we talk in private?" Brittany raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Ethan, darling, what's going on?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze locked on Olivia. "Brittany, this is Olivia, my ex-wife." Recognition dawned in Brittany's eyes, quickly followed by a complex mixture of curiosity and calculation. "Oh, I see, what an interesting coincidence." Olivia felt the weight of their combined stare. "I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of my shift. I can't." Now Olivia Ethan cut her off, standing up, his tone brokering no argument. Reluctantly, Olivia led him to a service corridor, away from the prying eyes of the other diners. Once they were out of sight, Ethan rounded on her, his eyes blazing. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snarled. "Working here in your condition?" Instinctively, Olivia's hand flew to her belly in a protective gesture. Doing what's necessary to survive, Ethan. Not all of us have the luxury of choice. Ethan's anger seemed to intensify as he noticed the gesture. You're pregnant. Is that why you—" "No," Olivia interrupted, her own anger flaring to life. "Don't you dare imply I planned this. You lost the right to question my choices the moment you left me with nothing." Ethan raked a hand through his perfect hair, clearly agitated. "I gave you a fair settlement. How did you end up like this?" Olivia let out a short, bitter laugh. "Fair, you call it fair, leaving me with debts I didn't even know existed, throwing me out of the house we built together, denying me even decent alimony." Ethan's expression faltered for a second, a shadow of doubt clouding his features. "I didn't know my lawyers took care of everything." "Of course," Olivia retorted, exhaustion lacing her voice, always delegating the unpleasant part, huh, Ethan? Before Ethan could respond, Brittany appeared at the end of the corridor. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, her tone saccharine but her eyes sharp as tacks. Olivia quickly composed herself. "Yes, of course, I apologize for the interruption. I'll be back in a moment to take your orders." She turned to leave, but Ethan grabbed her arm. "Wait, Olivia, we're not done." "Yes, we are," Olivia stated firmly, wrenching her arm free. "Enjoy your dinner, Mr. Miller." As Olivia walked away, Brittany turned to Ethan, her expression a mix of curiosity and mild annoyance. "Well, that was unexpected. Is there something you'd like to tell me, Thomas?" Ethan watched Olivia disappear back into the kitchen, a tempest of conflicting emotions churning inside him. "It's complicated," he finally replied. In the kitchen, Olivia sagged against a cold stainless steel wall, taking a deep breath to stave off the tears that threatened to fall. She could feel the baby kicking, as if sensing her distress. "Hey, you okay?" asked Maria, a fellow waitress, concern in her voice. Olivia forced a smile. "Yeah, just a difficult customer, nothing I can't handle." Meanwhile, back at the table, Brittany studied Ethan intently. "So, your ex-wife is pregnant and working as a waitress in one of the most expensive restaurants in town. Doesn't that seem odd to you?" Ethan took a long swallow of his wine, avoiding Brittany's piercing gaze. "As I said, it's complicated. I'd rather not talk about it." Brittany leaned in, her eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and something more calculating. "Ethan, darling, if we're going to build a future together, there can't be secrets between us. What really happened between you and Olivia?" Ethan hesitated, his eyes roaming the restaurant. He could see Olivia from a distance, moving between tables with a grace he hadn't noticed before. A strange, uncomfortable knot twisted in his gut. I don't know," he finally admitted, more to himself than to Brittany. "I really don't know." The rest of the night crawled by, the tension at their VIP table a stark contrast to the festive ambiance around them. Olivia avoided their table as much as she could, delegating to other servers whenever possible. As the dinner wound down, Ethan couldn't tear his eyes away from Olivia. The woman he saw now, struggling and pregnant, was a ghost of the wife he had left behind. And for the first time in months, he wondered if he had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. Fate, in its infinite wisdom, had orchestrated this collision, and the consequences for Ethan, Olivia, and Brittany were only just beginning to unfold. The clinking of silverware and the soft murmur of conversations filled the air at the skyline, but for Ethan it was all background noise, as if he were submerged underwater. His eyes were fixed on Olivia, who moved through the tables with a forced elegance, her pregnancy now painfully obvious to him. Brittany's touch on his hand jolted him back to reality. "Ethan, you've barely touched your plate. Are you all right?" He blinked, turning his attention back to Brittany. Her perfect face, which usually filled him with pride and desire, now seemed strangely foreign. I'm not feeling well," Ethan muttered, pushing his plate away. "I think we should leave." Brittany frowned, her perceptive gaze taking in more than Ethan intended. "Is it because of her, your ex-wife?" Ethan opened his mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he flagged down the nearest waiter. "The check, please, and could you ask Olivia to come over? Tell her I need to speak with her before we leave." The waiter nodded and scurried away. Minutes later, Olivia appeared, her face a mask of professionalism, though Ethan could see the strain in her eyes. "Yes, Mr. Miller, how can I help you?" The formality of her tone was a punch to the gut. "Olivia, we need to talk. Now." She hesitated, her eyes flicking to Brittany, who was watching the exchange with thinly veiled interest. "I'm in the middle of my shift. I can't." "For God's sake, Olivia," Ethan blurted out, his voice louder than he meant, drawing glances from nearby tables. He lowered his tone. "Please, 5 minutes." Olivia closed her eyes for a beat, as if gathering her strength, then gave a single, reluctant nod. "All right, 5 minutes." Ethan stood, turning to Brittany. "Give me a moment, please. I'll be right back." Brittany smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure, darling, take your time." Ethan followed Olivia back into the service corridor, away from the prying eyes of the other patrons. Once they were alone, he faced her, a storm of emotions warring on his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, his voice a raw mix of anger and something perilously close to guilt. Olivia crossed her arms protectively over her belly. "Tell you what exactly? That I'm pregnant, that I'm struggling to survive. What right do you think you have to that information, Ethan? I'm the father," he exploded, taking a step closer. Olivia took a step back, her eyes flashing with fire. "Oh, now you care about parenthood. Where was that concern when you left me with nothing?" Ethan raked a hand through his hair, frustration etched into every line of his body. "I gave you a fair deal, Olivia. You signed the papers." "Fair." Olivia laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "You call it fair, to leave me with debts I didn't even know existed, deny me a decent allowance. I had to sell everything. Ethan, everything." Ethan's anger faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "What are you talking about? My lawyers handled everything you should have received. I received nothing but bills and eviction notices." Olivia cut in, tears of pure frustration welling in her eyes. "While you went on with your perfect life, I was counting coins to buy food." Ethan stood in stunned silence for a moment, processing her words. Then, as if a switch flipped, his face hardened. "Wait a minute. That's why you're here, isn't it? You planned all of this? The pregnancy? This job all to manipulate me?" Olivia stared at him, incredulous. "You really think I would plan to get pregnant and work as a waitress at an expensive restaurant just to what make you feel guilty? You really have that low an opinion of me?" "Then why didn't you tell me about the pregnancy?" Ethan retorted, his voice rising again. "Because I found out the day you asked for the divorce," Olivia yelled, her composure finally shattering. "And when I saw how eager you were to be rid of me, to start your perfect new life, I just couldn't." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Ethan looked at Olivia as if he were seeing her for the first time. The woman before him was not the compliant wife he had discarded, but a force of nature, wounded but unbroken. "Olivia." Ethan began, his voice softening. "No?" Olivia cut him off, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare try apologizing. Now it's too late." "Ethan, I don't need your pity or your guilt. I'm moving on with or without you." At that moment, a movement at the end of the corridor caught their attention. Brittany stood there, watching them with an unreadable expression. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But I think the 5 minutes are up, aren't they?" Ethan looked from Brittany to Olivia, seemingly torn between two worlds. Olivia seized the opportunity to escape. "If you'll excuse me, I need to get back to work," she said, regaining a sliver of her professional demeanor. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." As Olivia walked away, Ethan watched her go, 1,000 emotions flickering across his face. Brittany approached him, placing a hand on his arm. "Well, that was enlightening," she remarked, her tone carefully neutral. "Is there something you want to tell me, Thomas?" Ethan continued to stare at the spot where Olivia had vanished, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts. For the first time in months, he wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. I don't know," he finally admitted, his voice low and uncertain. "I really don't know." Brittany studied him for a long moment, seeing a side of Ethan she had never witnessed before. Vulnerable, confused, human. She realized the man beside her wasn't the ruthless business titan she thought she knew, but someone far more complex and potentially far more damaged. "Maybe we should go," she suggested gently. "We have a lot to talk about." Ethan nodded mechanically, letting Brittany lead him back to their table and then out of the restaurant. As they left, his eyes searched for Olivia one last time, finding her serving another table, her face a perfect mask of professionalism. Fate had rolled the dice, and the lives of Ethan, Olivia, and Brittany would never be the same. The revelations of this night were only the beginning of a journey that would test the limits of love, forgiveness, and redemption. Olivia closed the door to her small Brooklyn studio, her back screaming after another endless shift at the skyline. She allowed herself a moment of weakness, sliding down to the floor with her back against the door. The encounter with Ethan had exhumed memories she'd fought so hard to bury. Closing her eyes, Olivia was transported back in time. 10 years ago. The apartment was tiny, but to Olivia and Ethan it was a palace. Newlyweds, they were overflowing with dreams and a happiness so potent it felt like it could light up the city. "A toast to our future," Ethan had exclaimed, raising a glass of cheap wine. Olivia had laughed, clinking it with her chipped coffee mug, all they could afford at the time. To Sterling Corp, Olivia had replied, her eyes shining with love and unshakable belief. Ethan had worked relentlessly in those early years. Olivia, then a teacher, spent her evenings grading papers next to him, plying him with coffee and encouragement as he drafted business plans. "You'll make it, honey," she'd say, massaging his tense shoulders. "I believe in you." 8 years ago. Ethan's first major victory, a contract that would change everything. Olivia had canceled her classes the next day to help him rehearse the presentation. "You're my rock," Olivia Ethan had said, kissing her passionately after closing the deal. "I couldn't have done it without you." That night they had dreamed about the future, planning the family they would have, the house they would build. 6 years ago, the first miscarriage. Olivia, curled up on the cold tiles of the hospital bathroom, shedding silent tears. Ethan in the hallway, on his phone, closing another deal. "I'm so sorry, honey," he'd said later, his mind clearly elsewhere. "But hey, we can try again right now. What do you think about that new project on the west side?" Olivia had swallowed her grief, forced a smile. "Sure, love sounds great. 5 years ago, the move to the mansion." Olivia, awestruck by the sheer space, already picturing where the children's rooms would be. "It's perfect, Ethan," she'd exclaimed, twirling in the vast living room. Ethan had smiled, checking his phone. "Glad you like it, listen. I have to run to a meeting. You mind overseeing the move by yourself?" Olivia's smile had faltered, but she'd nodded. "Of course, don't worry. Go conquer the world." 4 years ago, the second miscarriage. This time, Olivia didn't even tell Ethan. He was in the middle of a massive acquisition, away for weeks. Alone in the sterile hospital room, Olivia had made a decision. She called a fertility clinic and scheduled an appointment. Maybe science could give them what nature wouldn't. 3 years ago, the fertility treatments. Ethan had frowned, finally noticing the pamphlets on Olivia's nightstand. "Honey, don't you think you're overreacting? It'll happen naturally when the time's right." Olivia had felt something inside her crack. And when will that be, Ethan, when you finally have time for a family? The argument that followed was the first of many. The once imperceptible chasm between them began to widen. 2 years ago, business dinners became more frequent. Olivia, always the consummate hostess, would smile and make small talk while feeling increasingly hollowed out inside. One evening, after the guests had departed, she found Ethan in his home office. It was a success, yes, he'd exclaimed, giving her a perfunctory hug. Thanks to you, as always. I don't know what I'd do without you, Olivia. She had forced a smile, wishing he would just see her, really see the ache in her eyes. 1 year ago. The distance between them was a palpable entity in the house. Quiet nights, rushed breakfasts, superficial conversations. "How was your day?" Ethan would ask, his eyes glued to his laptop. "Same as always," Olivia would reply, knowing he wasn't really listening. 6 months ago. "I want a divorce." Ethan's words echoing in the cavernous living room, cold and final. Olivia, the positive pregnancy test still clutched in her robe pocket, had felt her world disintegrate. Why she had managed, her voice a ghost of a whisper. Ethan had sighed, as if explaining a complex business problem to a child. "We've grown apart." "Olivia, you must have noticed we're not the same people anymore." Olivia had wanted to scream, to show him the test, to remind him of every shared dream and sacrifice. But looking at the stranger before her, she knew the Ethan she had loved was already gone. Back in the present, Olivia opened her eyes, the reality of her small apartment closing in. Her hands moved to her prominent belly, feeling the reassuring flutter of her baby's movements. "It's just us now, little one," she murmured. "But we'll be okay." Across the city, Ethan sat in his penthouse office, an untouched glass of whiskey on the desk before him. The night's revelations replayed in his mind, forcing him to confront truths he had long since buried. The image of Olivia, pregnant and waiting tables, struggling to survive, mingled with memories of their shared past. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to truly look back. He remembered the light in Olivia's eyes when he landed his first big contract, the comfort of her hand in his after a long night of work, her unwavering presence at his side as he built his empire. And then, with searing clarity, he remembered every time he had overlooked her, prioritized work over her, failed to see her silent suffering. "What have I done?" Ethan murmured to the empty room, the full weight of his mistakes finally crashing down on him. The past had resurfaced, bringing with it uncomfortable truths and profound regrets. For both Olivia and Ethan, the future now seemed uncertain, burdened by the choices of the past and the unexpected consequences of the present. The silence in the car was thick and suffocating as Ethan and Brittany drove back from the skyline. Ethan stared out the window, lost in a fog of thoughts, while Brittany watched him, her expression a careful blend of curiosity and concern. Finally, as they reached Brittany's apartment, she broke the silence. "I think we need to talk, don't we?" Ethan nodded numbly, following her inside. Brittany's apartment, usually a sleek haven of luxury and pleasure, now felt like a cage. She poured 2 glasses of wine, handed one to Ethan, and sat across from him. "So, are you going to tell me what really happened between you and Olivia?" Ethan took a long swallow of wine, searching for the words. "It's complicated." "Try to explain," Brittany insisted, her voice gentle but firm. Ethan sighed, a heavy, rattling sound. "Olivia and we were together for 15 years. We built everything together. She was there from the start, when I had nothing but dreams and debts." Brittany listened intently as Ethan, for the first time, spoke candidly about his past. He described the lean early years, Olivia's sacrifices, the sleepless nights they'd spent working side by side. "She was my partner in everything," Ethan admitted, the realization a fresh wound, "but at some point I lost sight of her. And now she's pregnant and working as a waitress," Brittany finished for him, her tone neutral. "How did that even happen, Thomas?" Ethan raked a hand through his hair, his frustration palpable. "I don't know. I thought I left everything settled. My lawyers took care of the divorce, and she signed the papers." "Did you even read those papers?" Brittany asked, raising a perfectly arched eyebrow. Ethan's silence was a confession. Brittany set her glass down, leaning forward. Ethan, I need you to be honest with me now. What do you really want out of life? The question blindsided him. I want success, power, recognition. And does that make you happy? Brittany pressed. Ethan opened his mouth to give the automatic affirmative answer, but he hesitated. For the first time in a very long time, he truly considered the question. I thought so, he finally admitted, but now I'm not sure of anything. Brittany studied him for a long moment. You know, when we met, I was fascinated by your ambition, your power. I thought we had the same values, the same priorities, but the man I saw tonight in the restaurant isn't the man I thought I knew. Ethan felt a pang of guilt. Brittany, She held up a hand, cutting him off. Let me finish seeing you with Olivia. The way you reacted made me question everything. What kind of man leaves his pregnant wife with nothing? What kind of man doesn't even check if she's okay? Brittany's words were like physical blows. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The city lights glittered below, but for the first time they seemed cold and distant. I didn't know, he muttered. I really didn't know about the pregnancy, about her situation. But you should have, Brittany replied softly. If you really cared, you should have. Ethan turned to face her, unshed tears making his eyes glisten. You're right, I failed. I failed Olivia, and I failed myself. I lost myself somewhere along the way. Brittany stood and walked towards him. Ethan, I think you need some time to yourself to reflect on what really matters to you. He nodded slowly, the reality of his actions finally sinking in. I need to fix this somehow. Yes, you do. Brittany agreed, but not for me or Olivia or anyone else. You need to do it for yourself. Ethan looked at Brittany, seeing her in a new light. She wasn't just the ambitious partner he'd thought, but a woman with a depth and integrity he had completely overlooked. Brittany, he began, but she silenced him with a soft kiss on the cheek. It's okay, Ethan. I think we both know this between us isn't going to work. Not now, maybe never. Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. You deserve better, Brittany, someone who can give you 100% of themselves. She smiled sadly. And you need to find out who you really are, Ethan, away from the luxury cars, fancy dinners, and million dual deals. Ethan nodded, feeling both lost and liberated. He walked to the door, pausing before he left. Thank you, Brittany, for everything. Good luck, Ethan, she replied. I hope you find what you're looking for. As Ethan rode the elevator down, it felt as though he was leaving behind more than just a relationship. He was shedding a version of himself, one he now recognized as hollow and shallow. In the taxi on his way home, he stared out at the city he had fought so hard to conquer. For the first time in years, he wondered if the price of success had been too high. His phone buzzed with emails and market updates, but for the first time, Ethan ignored them. He had more important decisions to make, and he knew the first step was to face the wreckage of his past. As the city blurred past the taxi window, Ethan made a silent vow. He would find a way to make things right, no matter the cost. The man he had become was not the man he wanted to be. It was time for a change, for redemption. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Gray clouds hung low over the city as Ethan walked into his office atop the Sterling Corp Tower. The last few weeks had been a maelstrom of emotions and revelations, and he'd barely had time to process them before the consequences began to rain down. He had just sat down when his assistant, Jennifer, burst in. Mr. Miller, we have a problem. Business Insider is about to publish a story on your divorce and Ms. Olivia's situation. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. What? How did they find out? Jennifer hesitated. Apparently, someone from the skyline leaked the information. Rumors are flying all over the city. Ethan closed his eyes, a headache beginning to throb behind them. Cancel my appointments this morning. I need to handle this. As Jennifer retreated, Ethan picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over Olivia's contact. Should he warn her? Try to shield her? Before he could decide, the phone rang. It was Walter Sterling, one of his biggest investors. "Ethan, my boy." Walter's voice was tight. "I'm hearing some very disturbing rumors. I hope you can clarify this for me." Ethan swallowed hard. "Walter, I can explain. Explain how you left your pregnant ex-wife in poverty. How you apparently deceived her in the divorce settlement." Walter cut in, his voice now sharp with anger. "Ethan, we trusted you not just with our money, but with our reputation. If we can't trust how you treat your own family, how can we trust you with our investments?" The call was a painful 20-minute ordeal, with Ethan desperately trying to reassure his mentor. When he finally hung up, he felt defeated and exhausted. The rest of the day was a cascade of similar disasters. Emails from anxious business partners flooded his inbox. Calls from eager journalists clamored for a comment. Even some of his oldest employees looked at him with a mixture of disappointment and judgment. By late afternoon, Ethan found himself in an emergency board meeting. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, accusatory glances flying from all sides. Ethan began. "Sarah, the CFO, we understand your personal life is your own, but when it affects the company's reputation, it becomes our problem too." Ethan nodded, feeling strangely diminished in the chair that was once his throne. "I understand, and I apologize for any harm my actions might have caused the company." David, the marketing director, leaned forward. "Apologies aren't going to cut it this time." "Ethan, we need action. We need to show the public that Sterling Corp has integrity, that we care about people." The next few hours were a blur of damage control strategies, charitable donations, public statements, even the suggestion that Ethan temporarily step down as CEO. When he finally left the office, it was dark. Ethan found himself on the sidewalk, staring up at the building that bore his name. The empire he had built with so much sweat and sacrifice now felt terrifyingly fragile, threatened not by a market crash or a competitor, but by his own moral failings. His phone buzzed. A text from Brittany. "Saw the news. Hope you're okay if you need to talk. I'm here." Ethan managed a sad smile. Even after everything, she still cared. He started to type a reply, but stopped. What could he say? That he was fine? A lie? That he was sorry? The words felt hollow. Walking through the city, Ethan allowed himself, for the first time in years, to truly see the people around him. Couples holding hands, families sharing a simple meal at a diner, friends laughing in a bar. Scenes from a life he had forgotten existed outside of boardrooms and power lunches. He stopped in front of a store window, his own reflection staring back. The expensive suit, the luxury watch, the impeccable haircut, all the symbols of success he had valued so highly. But looking closer, Ethan saw something else. The exhaustion in his eyes, the worry lines etched into his forehead, the tension in his shoulders. Was it worth it, he whispered to his reflection? All this success, all this power, was it worth the price he had paid? The memories of the past few days flooded his mind. Olivia's wounded expression at the restaurant, Brittany's disappointment, the judgment in the eyes of his colleagues, and underneath it all, the crushing realization of how much he had lost, not just Olivia and the baby, but a fundamental part of himself. Ethan turned away from the glass, feeling both adrift and resolute. His empire might be crumbling, but maybe, just maybe, this was the wake-up call he needed. A chance to reevaluate not just his actions, but his entire value system. As he walked back to his empty penthouse, Ethan made a decision. No matter the cost to his career or his reputation, he would find a way to make this right. Not just for Olivia or the company, but for himself. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and likely more loss. But for the first time in a very long time, Ethan felt like he was finally walking in the right direction. The empire he'd built might be shaking, but perhaps from its ruins, something more valuable could rise. A man rediscovered, with his values realigned and his purpose renewed. The skyline was at its peak, dinner hour, the hum of conversations and the clinking of silverware filling the air. Olivia maneuvered between tables with her usual grace, but her face was pale, and beads of sweat glistened on her forehead. Order for table 7. She murmured to herself, balancing a heavy tray. Her vision began to blur, and she felt a wave of dizziness. "Olivia, are you okay?" asked Maria, noticing her state. Olivia tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. I'm... Before she could finish, the world spun violently. The tray slipped from her hands, dishes shattering on the floor. Olivia felt her legs give way, and everything went dark. The restaurant's hum turned into chaos. Customers screamed for help. Servers rushed to call an ambulance. Within minutes, paramedics arrived, carrying Olivia out on a stretcher. Ethan was in his office, trying to deal with the PR crisis, when he got the call. "Mr. Miller, this is New York Presbyterian Hospital." Olivia Miller was admitted to the ER. Ethan didn't hear the rest. His heart pounded in his chest, and he found himself running out of the building, yelling for his driver to get him to the hospital, fast. At the hospital, Ethan found Olivia unconscious, hooked up to monitors and an IV. Her face, usually so vibrant, was pale and drawn. Her pregnant belly looked even more pronounced against her fragile frame. A doctor approached, his expression grave. "Mr. Miller, I'm Dr. Evans." Ethan could barely tear his eyes away from Olivia. How is she?" "Stable for now," Dr. Evans said, "but we're concerned Ms. Miller is severely dehydrated and malnourished. Her stress levels are alarmingly high, especially for someone in her condition." Ethan felt as though he'd been punched in the gut. The baby. "The fetus is stable at the moment, but there are risks and we need close monitoring." The doctor paused, studying Ethan. "Mr. Miller, we discovered your wife." "Ex-wife," Ethan corrected automatically, instantly regretting it. The doctor nodded. "We discovered Ms. Olivia has been working 3 different jobs, waitress, cleaning staff, and store clerk, none of which are suitable for someone in her condition." Ethan closed his eyes, guilt consuming him. Scenes of Olivia, exhausted and pregnant, flashed through his mind. "She needs complete bed rest," Dr. Evans continued, "and proper care, adequate nutrition, regular prenatal follow-ups. Without it, both she and the baby are at serious risk." Ethan nodded mechanically, his mind spinning. How had it come to this? How had he allowed the woman he once promised to love and protect to end up here? Hours passed. Ethan remained by Olivia's bedside, watching every flicker of her face, every change on the monitors. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting meds. Near dawn, Olivia began to stir. Her eyes fluttered open, confused. Where am I?" she murmured. "A hospital," Ethan answered softly. "You fainted at work." Olivia's eyes widened at the familiar voice. She tried to sit up, but Ethan gently stopped her. "Easy, you need to rest." Olivia stared at him, a storm of emotions on her face. "What are you doing here?" The vulnerability in her voice shattered something inside Ethan. I'm your emergency contact, they called me." Olivia closed her eyes, her exhaustion palpable. "I need to get back to work. I can't lose my jobs." "No," Ethan said firmly. "You're not going anywhere. The doctor said you and the baby need absolute rest." Tears began to slide down Olivia's cheeks. "You don't understand. I need to work the bills, the rent." Ethan felt his heart break. This strong, independent woman reduced to such desperation. And it was all his fault. "Olivia," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry. I had no idea. I should have checked, should have made sure you were okay." Olivia looked at him, years of hurt and disappointment in her eyes. "Why would you care? You moved on Ethan with your perfect life, your new girlfriend." "No," Ethan interrupted. "None of that matters. Now all that matters is you and the baby. I'm going to fix this, Olivia. I promise." Olivia let out a bitter laugh. "Fix it? How you can't just throw money at the problem and expect it to go away. Ethan, it doesn't work like that." Ethan leaned forward, taking Olivia's hand in his. She didn't pull away, which he took as a small victory. "I know I can't undo what I did," he said softly. But I can try to do the right thing from now on. Please let me help." Olivia studied him for a long moment, searching his eyes. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her, at least for now. "Okay," she finally whispered, "but not for me, for the baby." Ethan nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. It was a start, however small. As Olivia drifted back to sleep, exhausted, Ethan kept vigil by her side. His mind raced, planning his next steps. He knew he had a long road ahead to redeem himself, to undo the damage he had caused. Looking at Olivia and the life growing inside her, Ethan made a silent vow. He would do whatever it took to ensure they were safe and cared for, no matter the cost to his career, his reputation, or his lifestyle. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like he was doing something that truly mattered. And though the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, he was determined to walk it, one step at a time. Ethan gazed out at the city from his office window, but his mind was miles away. The weeks since Olivia's hospital scare had been an emotional whirlwind. For the first time in years, he was questioning every aspect of his life. The phone rang, snapping him out of his reverie. It was his new assistant, Emily. "Mr. Miller, your session with Dr. Lee starts in 30 minutes. Ethan sighed. "Thank you, Emily, I'm on my way." Therapy. If anyone had suggested it months ago, he would have laughed. Ethan Miller didn't need therapy. He was a ruthless business titan, unshakable. But now, Dr. Lee's office was an oasis of calm in the chaos of the city. Ethan settled uncomfortably on the couch, feeling exposed without his suit of armor. "How are you feeling today?" Dr. Lee asked, her voice kind but probing. Ethan hesitated, honestly lost, confused, like I'm trying to climb a mountain without any gear. Dr. Lee nodded encouragingly. "That's natural when you're going through major changes. You mentioned last session you wanted to reevaluate your priorities. Have you had time to reflect on that?" Ethan closed his eyes, the sleepless nights spent replaying his life flashing before him. "Yes, I realized I built my entire life around success and power. I thought that would make me happy, fulfilled. But now, Dr. Lee prompted. Now I see that I sacrificed far more important things along the way. My marriage, the chance to be a father, genuine relationships." His voice cracked. How could I have been so blind? The session continued, with Ethan unpacking layers of long-buried emotions, guilt, regret, fear of the future. But also, surprisingly, a spark of hope. Leaving Dr. Lee's office, Ethan felt drained, yet oddly lighter. His phone buzzed, a reminder of an important meeting at the company. He paused, then called Emily. "Emily, cancel my commitments for the rest of the day. I have something important to do." Ethan found himself driving to a quiet residential neighborhood, far from the skyscrapers and glamour of the financial district. He stopped in front of a modest brownstone, his heart pounding when he saw the name O. Miller on the mailbox. Summoning his courage, he rang the bell. Olivia opened the door, surprise evident on her face. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" He noticed how she instinctively placed a hand over her now very prominent belly. "I wanted to see how you were," he said, feeling incredibly vulnerable. "May I come in?" Olivia hesitated, then stepped aside. "Sure." The apartment was small but cozy. Ethan noticed the details: a half-assembled crib in the corner, pregnancy books on the coffee table, a framed photo of them from their college days. "You look well," Ethan commented, genuinely relieved to see more color in Olivia's cheeks. She nodded, carefully settling onto the couch. "Bed rest has helped, and well, not having to worry about finances for a while, too." Ethan felt a pang of guilt. After the hospital, he had insisted on covering all of Olivia's expenses and ensuring she had financial support. It was the least he could do. "Olivia," he began, but she held up a hand. "Ethan, if you're here to apologize again, you don't have to. I've heard your apologies." He shook his head. "No, it's not that. Or rather, it's not just that. I wanted to talk, really talk about us, about the past, about the future." Olivia studied him for a long moment. "You seem different," she finally said. Ethan gave a sad smile. "I'm trying to be different better." In the hours that followed, they had the most honest, painful conversation of their lives. He spoke of his journey of self-reflection, of therapy, of how he was reevaluating every aspect of his life. "I realized I built an empire but lost my humanity in the process," Ethan admitted, tears in his eyes, "and worst of all, I dragged you down with me." Olivia listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes crying silently. "Why now, Ethan? What changed?" He looked at her, at the life growing inside her. "Everything changed. Seeing you in that hospital, it was like a slap in the face. I realized I'd become someone I would despise." As the sun set, casting golden shadows across the apartment, Ethan felt a connection with Olivia he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't romance or the passion of old, but something deeper, understanding perhaps, or the beginning of forgiveness. "What happens now?" Olivia asked softly. Ethan drew a deep breath. "Honestly, I don't know, but I do know I want to be part of this baby's life. If you'll let me, I want to be a present father, a friend to you. I want to fix things not just with money, but with actions, with time. With—" He hesitated. "Love?" Olivia looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity. Whatever she saw seemed to satisfy her, at least for now. "It's going to be a long journey, Ethan," she said. He nodded. "I know, and I'm ready for it." When Ethan finally left Olivia's apartment, night had fallen. Walking to his car, he felt both exhausted and hopeful. The Ethan of a few months ago would have rushed back to the office, burying himself in work to avoid his emotions. But now he picked up his phone and called Emily. "Emily, I need you to make some changes to my schedule starting tomorrow. I want at least 2 hours a day for personal matters and set up a meeting with the board. There are some business practices we need to reassess." Hanging up, Ethan looked up at Olivia's window. The light was still on. He smiled softly, feeling for the first time in years that he was on the right track. The transformation would be difficult. There would be days when the old Ethan, hungry for power and success, would try to reclaim control. But now he had something worth fighting for, something more valuable than any $1,000,000 deal. The chance at redemption, the opportunity to become the man he should have been all along. With one last glance at the building, Ethan got into his car and drove away. Not toward his empty penthouse, but toward an uncertain future that was, nevertheless, full of possibility. The process of change had only just begun, but for the first time in a long while, Ethan Miller felt truly alive. The hospital corridor seemed endless as Ethan walked toward Olivia's room. His palms were sweaty, and he kept adjusting his tie, a habit that persisted even after weeks of trying to distance himself from his old persona. He stopped at the door, taking a deep breath before knocking softly. "Come in," Olivia's voice sounded from the other side. Ethan entered, his eyes instantly finding Olivia in the hospital bed. She looked stronger than the last time he'd seen her, but there was still a fragility about her that made his heart clench. "Hey," he said quietly, stepping closer. "How are you feeling?" Olivia offered a small smile. "Better, the doctors say. I can be discharged tomorrow as long as I promise to keep resting at home." Ethan nodded, taking a seat in the chair beside her bed. For a moment they both sat in silence, the weight of unspoken years hanging in the air. "Olivia?" Ethan began, his voice faltering. "I'm so sorry for everything." Olivia looked into his eyes, searching for honesty. "You've said that before, Thomas." "I know," he replied, running a hand through his hair, "but this time it's different. I really understand now what I did, how much I hurt you. I've been blind for so long." Olivia sighed, adjusting herself on the bed. "What changed, Ethan? Why now?" Ethan took a moment to gather his thoughts. "Seeing you that night in the restaurant, and then here in the hospital, it was like the scales fell from my eyes. I saw the monster I had become, how much of myself I'd lost along the way." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. You have no idea how hard it was, Ethan, the days without food, the nights without sleep, worrying about bills, and all of it while carrying our child. Ethan felt his heart shatter. I should have been there for you, for both of you. I failed not just as a husband, but as a human being. Olivia reached out, gently touching Ethan's arm. The simple gesture carried the weight of years of shared history. I made mistakes too, Ethan. I should have told you about the pregnancy, maybe if I had. No, Ethan interrupted gently. Don't blame yourself. I gave you every reason to doubt me. They fell silent, both lost in memories and regrets. I want to be part of this baby's life, Olivia Ethan finally said. If you'll let me, I want to be a present father, and I want to fix things between us, not romantically, but as friends, as co-parents. Olivia opened her mouth to answer, but was cut off by the sound of the door abruptly opening. What the hell is he doing here? A furious voice rang out. Ethan turned, surprised to see a woman he recognized as Jessica, Olivia's younger sister. Jessica marched in, positioning herself protectively between Ethan and the bed. You've got some nerve showing up after everything you did. Jessica, please. Olivia tried to intervene, but her sister was relentless. No, Olivia, he needs to hear this. Jessica turned back to Ethan, her eyes blazing. Do you have any idea what she's been through the nights? She cried herself to sleep the days she barely had anything to eat because you left her with nothing. Ethan stepped back, feeling the weight of each word. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, Jessica continued. You were too busy with your new life, your new girlfriend, to care about the woman who gave 15 years of her life to you. Olivia tried to get up. Jessica, please, it's not like. But Jessica wasn't done. She had to sell her wedding ring just to pay rent. You know, she worked 3 different jobs while pregnant because you left her penniless. Ethan felt every word like a physical blow. He looked at Olivia, seeing the pain in her eyes, not just from the current situation, but from all the memories Jessica was dredging up. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. I really had no idea. Sorry isn't good enough, Jessica spat. You don't deserve a second chance. You don't deserve to be in this baby's life. Jessica Olivia finally managed, her voice firm despite the tears. Stop, please. A heavy silence followed. Ethan felt torn between wanting to defend himself and the growing certainty that Jessica was right. Olivia took a deep breath, looking from her sister to Ethan. I appreciate your concern, Jessica, but this is a decision I need to make. Jessica turned to her sister, incredulous. Olivia, you can't be considering forgiving him, not after everything. It's not about forgiveness, Olivia interrupted softly. It's about the future of my child. Ethan, who had remained silent, finally found his voice. I understand your anger, Jessica, and you're right. I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove I've changed to be the father this baby deserves. Jessica glared at him, distrust evident in her eyes. Words are easy. Ethan, actions are what matter. Olivia reached out, taking her sister's hand. I know you're just trying to protect me, Jessica, and I thank you for that, but I need you to trust me now. Tension filled the room for several minutes, Jessica's gaze shifting between her sister and Ethan. Finally, she let out a deep sigh. Fine, she said, her voice still thick with emotion. But I'll be watching you, Ethan, one misstep, and... Ethan nodded solemnly. I understand, and I accept. Feeling his presence was now causing more tension than good, Ethan stood up. I think I should go. Olivia, can I call to check on you? Olivia offered a small smile. Yes, you can. As Ethan headed for the door, Jessica followed. In the hallway, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. She might be willing to give you a chance, but I haven't forgotten what you did, Jessica said, her voice low and intense. Prove that you've changed Ethan not with words or money, but with consistent actions, because if you hurt her again, I swear you'll regret it. Ethan met her eyes, seeing not just anger, but a fierce love for Olivia. I promise, Jessica, I'll do everything I can to make this right. Leaving the hospital, Ethan felt emotionally drained. Jessica's words echoed in his mind, mingling with memories of Olivia's suffering. He wondered, not for the first time, if he truly deserved a second chance. Back in the hospital room, Olivia and Jessica spoke in hushed tones. "Are you sure about this?" soft Jessica asked, worry evident in her voice. Olivia gently stroked her belly. "I'm not sure about anything, to be honest, but I know this baby deserves a chance to know its father, and Ethan. He seems genuinely remorseful." Jessica sighed. "Remorse doesn't erase what he did." "No," Olivia agreed, "but it can be the start of something new. I'm not saying I'm going to fully forgive him or that we'll go back to what we were, but for this baby's sake, I'm willing to try." The sisters fell silent, each lost in her own thoughts. "I'll be here for you," Jessica finally said, holding Olivia's hand. "No matter what happens." Olivia smiled, grateful for her sister's unwavering support. "I know, and that's why I know I can face whatever comes next." As night fell over the city, three souls pondered the uncertain future. Ethan, determined to prove his worth and fix his mistakes. Olivia, navigating the turbulent waters of forgiveness and motherhood. And Jessica, a fierce guardian, ready to protect her sister at all costs. The road ahead would be hard, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but with each new sunrise came an opportunity to start over, to heal old wounds, and perhaps to build a better future for them all. The weeks following Olivia's hospital discharge tested Ethan's patience and resolve. Every morning he woke with a renewed purpose, to prove that his words of change were not empty. His first impulse was to offer substantial financial help. He arrived at Olivia's apartment with a large check, only to be met with a look of distrust. "I don't want your money," Olivia said firmly, crossing her arms over her prominent belly. Ethan lowered the check, feeling awkward. "I only want to help Olivia make sure you and the baby have everything you need." "What we need is consistency, not checks," she replied, her voice softening slightly. "If you really want to help, start by being present." That conversation was a turning point for Ethan. He realized he couldn't just throw money at the problem and expect it to fix everything. It was time to truly get involved, to prove that he was committed not only to Olivia and the baby's financial well-being, but also their emotional well-being. He started with small gestures. Every morning before heading to the office, Ethan stopped by Olivia's apartment with decaf coffee and fresh fruit. At first, Olivia hesitated to open the door, but gradually she began to expect these morning visits. "You don't have to do this every day," she commented one morning, accepting the coffee. Ethan gave a gentle smile. "I know, but I want to." Prenatal appointments became a regular meeting point. Ethan made it a point to be at every one of them, absorbing every detail of the baby's development, asking the doctor's questions, offering quiet support to Olivia. It was during one of these appointments that Olivia first noticed a real change in Ethan. When the doctor mentioned potential complications due to her previous stressful pregnancy state, Ethan visibly paled. "What can we do to make sure everything's okay?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine worry. Olivia watched him closely, seeing not the cold executive he had become, but glimpses of the man she had once loved. Still, not everything was smooth. Jessica's distrust remained a significant barrier. Whenever Ethan showed up, Jessica was there, her sharp eyes following his every move. "Do you really think he's changed?" Jessica asked Olivia one night after Ethan had left. Olivia sighed, gently stroking her belly. "I'm not sure, Jessica, but he's trying. That's got to count for something, right?" Ethan, for his part, faced Jessica's hostility with patience and understanding. "I get your skepticism," he told her one day. "You're protecting your sister. I do the same in your shoes." Jessica studied him for a long moment before responding. "Words are easy, Ethan. I'm still waiting to see consistent actions." And Ethan was determined to show that consistency. He began reassessing his priorities at work, delegating more responsibilities to be more present for Olivia and the baby's preparations. One day, Olivia found him assembling the crib in her apartment, sweating and clearly frustrated with the instructions. "You know you could have hired someone to do that, right?" she remarked, a slight smile tugging at her lips. Ethan looked at her, a piece of wood in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. "I wanted to do it myself for our child." The phrase "our child" hung in the air, laden with meaning. Olivia felt something shift inside her, and it wasn't just the baby. As the weeks turned into months, the wall around Olivia's heart began to show cracks. She found herself looking forward to Ethan's visits, enjoying his company during long afternoons of bed rest. One day, while discussing baby names, Olivia asked a question she had been holding back. "Why, Ethan? Why this sudden change?" Ethan stayed silent for a moment, carefully choosing his words. "It wasn't sudden, Olivia. It was a painful, gradual awakening. I realized I'd become someone I despised, someone who hurt the person who mattered most. And when I saw you in that hospital, it was like I finally saw myself clearly for the first time in years." Silent tears ran down Olivia's face as she listened. Ethan continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't expect you to fully forgive me. I know I caused damage that might never fully heal. But I'm determined to be the best father I can be for our child, and if you'll allow it, a friend to you again." Olivia reached out, lightly touching Ethan's arm. "We still have a long road ahead," she said softly, "but I'm glad you're here now." At that moment, the baby kicked, as if emphasizing the point. They both laughed, the tension dissipating somewhat. As the end of the pregnancy neared, the dynamic between Ethan and Olivia continued to evolve. It wasn't the passionate love of old, nor the bitterness of recent months. It was something new, fragile, but full of possibility. Jessica, watching closely, began to lower her guard, if only slightly. "He really seems to be trying," she reluctantly admitted to Olivia one evening. Olivia nodded, a small smile on her face. "Yes, he is. Preparing for the baby's imminent arrival, there was a sense of caution, but also of hope." Ethan had proven he was willing to do the hard work of rebuilding trust. Olivia, in turn, was learning to open her heart again, however slowly. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it glowed with possibility. The baby, about to be born, would not only be a new beginning for the child, but in many ways, for all of them. The sharp cry of a newborn echoed through the hospital halls, announcing Lily's arrival into the world. Ethan, tears in his eyes, held Olivia's hand tightly as she gave her final pushes. "She's beautiful," Ethan whispered in awe, seeing his daughter for the first time. Olivia, exhausted but radiant, smiled at him. "We did it, Ethan. She's here." In the days that followed, Ethan never left Olivia and Lily's side. He fumbled through diaper changes, learned to prepare bottles, and spent hours simply watching his daughter sleep. Jessica, who arrived at the hospital hours after the birth, observed Ethan with a mix of surprise and caution. "He really does seem committed," she commented quietly to Olivia. Olivia nodded, a small smile on her lips. "He's been trying so hard, Jessica, not just for Lily, but for us too." The weeks turned into months, and the dynamic between Ethan and Olivia continued to grow. Ethan drastically reduced his office hours, prioritizing his role as a father and friend to Olivia. One Sunday afternoon, about 6 months after Lily's birth, Ethan showed up at Olivia's apartment with a determined look on his face. "I thought we could spend the day at the park," he suggested, "just the three of us." Olivia, surprised but pleasantly touched, agreed. The day was filled with laughter, light-hearted conversation, and precious moments with Lily. Sitting on a park bench, watching Lily crawl on the grass, Olivia turned to Ethan. "You've really changed, haven't you?" Ethan nodded, his eyes on his daughter. "I realize that all the success in the world means nothing if you don't have genuine love and purpose in your life." Olivia felt a surge of emotion. The man beside her was so different from the Ethan she'd known years ago, yet in many ways he was more authentic than ever. Over time, Ethan discovered a happiness he'd never known before. The simple moments, reading bedtime stories to Lily, strolling through the park with Olivia, simply being present, brought a fulfillment no million-dollar deal could match. On Lily's first birthday, Ethan organized a small party in Olivia's backyard. Nothing extravagant, just close friends and family. Jessica, watching Ethan help Lily blow out her single candle, said to Olivia, "I have to admit, he really has transformed." Olivia smiled, her eyes on Ethan and Lily. "Yes, he has, and we have too. Jessica, we've all grown." As the day went on, Ethan approached Olivia, who was sitting off to the side. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. Olivia smiled, her gaze meeting his. "About how unpredictable life is. 2 years ago, I would never have imagined we'd be here like this." Ethan nodded, a serious expression on his face. "Olivia, I know we still have a long road ahead, but I want you to know how grateful I am for this second chance for letting me be a part of Lily's life and yours." Olivia took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You earned it, Ethan. Day by day you proved your commitment." At that moment, Lily wobbled toward them, her first steps uncertain but determined. Ethan picked her up, laughing with joy. "Look at you, princess," he exclaimed, spinning her around. Olivia watched the scene, her heart overflowing with love. She realized that although the road had been difficult and painful, it had led to something precious and beautiful. Jessica joined them, a genuine smile on her face. "I think someone's ready for cake," she said, pointing to Lily, who reached out toward the dessert table. While they sang happy birthday, Ethan glanced around, his daughter smiling and clapping awkwardly, Olivia radiant and at peace, Jessica finally accepting him as part of the family, and himself, so different from the man he'd been just 2 years ago. Later, when the guests had left and Lily was sound asleep, Ethan, Olivia, and Jessica sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet night. "You know," Jessica began, breaking the silence, "I really doubted we'd ever see a day like this, all of us here like this." Ethan nodded, standing. "I doubted it too. Jessica, there were moments I thought I'd lost everything forever." Olivia looked at them both, a soft smile on her lips. "But here we are, living proof that people can change, that forgiveness is possible." Ethan took Olivia's hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice laden with emotion, "to both of you for this second chance." Jessica shrugged, but her smile was warm. "You proved yourself, Ethan, and seeing my sister and my niece happy, well, that's all I ever wanted." As the night wore on, the three reflected on the journey that had brought them there, the pain, the struggles, the moments of doubt, but also the growth, the redemption, and the renewed love. Ethan, gazing at the starry sky, felt a peace he had never known. He had learned that true wealth wasn't about bank accounts or million-dollar contracts, but about the connections we build and the lives we touch. Olivia, watching the man beside her, felt grateful for the path they'd walked. Forgiveness, she discovered, wasn't just a gift to the other person, but a release for herself. And Jessica, the silent witness to everyone's transformation, acknowledged the power of love and family in all their imperfect, beautiful forms. When they finally said goodnight, a palpable sense of a new beginning hung in the air. Not the end of a journey, but the start of a new chapter, a chapter written with lessons from the past and promises for the future. Before leaving, Ethan looked at Olivia once more. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." Olivia smiled, understanding all that his words carried. "Good night, Ethan. See you tomorrow." And so, under the summer night sky, 3 souls found peace. Not a perfect or challenge-free peace, but one built on foundations of love, forgiveness, and an unwavering belief in second chances. Ethan, Olivia, and Lily's story was far from over, but now, with open hearts and renewed spirits, they were ready to face whatever the future held, together as a rediscovered and rebuilt family.